The next one is from Jay. I'm haunted by what seems the near certainty of escalation into war that will affect us all severely. As someone completely dependent on the system functioning well enough to provide insulin so I can stay alive, this is even more present to me as a fear. At the same time, I see the damage of posting or sharing such fears on the young people in my life. Example, some of my online music students at an elite school in New York City are devastated because their friend, a creative and sensitive 14-year-old girl, committed suicide last Sunday. I want to share, warn people, but not come across as a compulsive doomsayer. How does unlearning help this dilemma?
Beautiful. Yes. This is a good example of the filter that the news imposes on us. If you are just looking at the news, from most perspectives anyway, the situation is looking very bad in, Ukraine with regards to Russia, the escalation that the U.S. foreign policy establishment has been pushing and pushing and pushing, and then in West Asia as well, with regards to Israel, Palestine, Iran, Lebanon, Hezbollah, all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of very precarious situations, and that is what we tend to see through the lens of the news media and the social media ecosystem that surrounds it. But this is a perfect example because there's a lot of information that doesn't get through there. In both of those conflicts, there has actually been a lot of restraint exercised by key parties. And that restraint, things could have gotten way, way more out of hand by now. There have been many moments where things could have gotten out of hand and they haven't. Why? What's going on there? That it hasn't gotten totally out of hand by now might be surprising to somebody who has been following the news for a long time. If it is at all surprising, if you have a feeling that we're kind of lucky actually that it hasn't already erupted into full-blown total war. If you feel like we're a little lucky, there's a little bit of surprise there, maybe even of gratitude. That could indicate that there is information that is not available to you that would contradict the doom narrative. And so I think that your restraint in not pushing the doom narrative is very admirable because you're sensitive to a lacuna, a gap in your knowledge, and you're willing to unlearn that knowledge and to be then available to other knowledge. So the field of restraint is generated by every single time that any one of us exercises restraint in a situation where we could punish somebody, we could, seek vindication, we could make sure that everybody knows that we're right. But instead we have an opportunity to let it go, to forgive, to seek what makes people happy rather than what makes you right. And that's not to say to allow abusive behavior to continue. We seek to make it end, but we don't need to punish for what has already happened if that punishment doesn't serve the cessation of the cycle of violence and trauma. So that's a whole other topic, but I just want to say that this is a good example of the filter that makes things look worse than they really are. And you can propagate, if you can even sense this other source of information that would help explain why things aren't a lot worse than they are right now, because they could be. But if you acknowledge that there is other information and find the part of you that co-resonates with that knowledge, with that information, then you can be a force for healing. And you can help hold other people in good cheer, in positivity, and it's not a false positivity, because remember, you're actually drawing on a real source of information here. And so the young people will then be attracted to what you hold. And maybe one of them who would have committed suicide doesn't. So this is one reason why it's so important to maintain a through line to the information that comes from the source that feeds the peacemaking, the restraint, the holding together of the world when it could have already fallen apart. So there is some force at work that is holding things together. And that is not easily visible through the news lens, but it's there, and we feel it alive inside of ourselves.